Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're jumping right into the almost catastrophic origin story of Elon Musk's entire empire. This is all based on a documentary from 2014 that really caught him right after he stared into the abyss, and we're going to look at that single moment where his whole vision and his entire fortune nearly collapsed for good.
So let's set the scene. We're not starting at the beginning. No, we are jumping right into the deep end, the end of 2008. The global economy is in an absolute freefall, and Elon Musk is, for all intents and purposes, broke. He's facing this impossible choice that will either save one of his companies or send him into personal bankruptcy.
So you have to ask, right? How did he even get to this point? To really understand that, we've got to rewind the clock. It all begins with this brilliant but kind of bullied outsider kid growing up in South Africa.
You know, his early life is that classic nerd to riches story. He called himself a bookworm kid who, and this is great, literally ran out of books to read in his school and local libraries, so he just started reading the encyclopedia. He taught himself how to code, moved to North America because he saw it as the land of opportunity, and launched his first company with his brother while sleeping on couches in their own office. This incredible climb led to two massive buyouts that would totally change his life forever.
$180 million. Just think about that. That was his personal cut from the PayPal deal, and he's only 30 years old. That's more money than most of us could ever dream of. It was more than enough to retire, buy a private jet, a fancy car, maybe even a whole chain of islands.
But here's the thing about Musk. He had absolutely zero interest in just kicking back and sipping Mai Tais on a beach. He didn't see that money as the finish line. Nope. For him, it was just the beginning. It was fuel for ambitions that were, well, literally out of this world. So what does he do? He takes his entire fortune and plows it right into two industries that all the experts were calling suicide missions for a startup: rockets and cars.
I mean, you really have to stop and think about the sheer audacity here. On one side, a private rocket company to go up against NASA and these huge government contractors, with the ultimate goal of colonizing Mars. And then on the other side, an electric car company designed to take on the entire global auto industry.
And this wasn't just some casual investment. It was an absolutely unprecedented gamble. No private individual had ever successfully built and launched their own orbital rockets. He was betting the house on a dream to, as he said, re-energize space travel.
And his plan for Tesla was just as wild, though also kind of brilliant in how simple it was. See, unlike other car companies that start with cheap, mass-market cars, Tesla was going to start at the very top. They'd build a high-performance electric sports car to prove the tech was cool, build up the brand, and then use that money to work their way down to an affordable car for everyone. So for years, both companies are just burning through cash, struggling to get off the ground. But then, 2008 hits, and those two impossible dreams, well, they run headfirst into an absolute nightmare. It was the definition of a perfect storm. The entire global financial system was melting down, which meant investment money just vanished. Overnight. At the exact same time, Musk is going through a very public, very difficult divorce, and both SpaceX and Tesla are running out of cash, and they are running out of it fast. This chart, this shows you the brutal, brutal reality of rocket science. Every single one of those bars represents a multi-million-dollar rocket just exploding. By the third failure, Musk had burned through his entire $100 million investment. He had just enough money left for one last try.
And while all that's going on, you look over at Tesla, and things are just as bad. The cost to actually produce their first car, the Roadster, had more than doubled. That meant they were losing a fortune on every single car they sold. The company was in a death spiral, and with the financial crisis raging, no investor was going to touch them with a 10-foot pole.
So you can see, this wasn't just a business problem anymore. By the last few weeks of 2008, Musk was on the verge of losing everything: his companies, his fortune, and by his own admission, his sanity.
I mean, it was the darkest moment of his entire career. But what happened next in just the final days of 2008 became one of the most dramatic, frankly unbelievable turnarounds in modern business history. It was just this rapid-fire series of last-minute miracles. First, against all odds, that fourth and final SpaceX launch is a success. That one success convinces NASA to award them a stunning $1.6 billion contract. Then, literally hours before Christmas, Musk scrapes together his last few personal dollars to save Tesla. That gutsy move convinces Daimler to invest, which then unlocks a critical government loan.
Now, that government loan, That became hugely controversial. Critics, including presidential candidate Mitt Romney at the time, were lumping Tesla in with other failed green tech companies. One commentator said, "You don't just pick the winners and losers, you pick the losers."
But, well, that bet on a loser paid off. Big time. Tesla didn't just survive, it thrived. And they paid back that loan almost a decade early. The government, and by extension the American taxpayer, actually made a profit on the deal.
See, fast forward just a few years to 2014, and the whole picture is completely different. The guy who was on the brink of total failure, his reputation was now being cemented as a real-life Tony Stark, the guy who could achieve the impossible. And his companies weren't just surviving anymore, they were becoming industry leaders. SpaceX was flying missions for NASA to the International Space Station. Tesla's Model S was winning Car of the Year awards left and right, and his third company, Solar City, had become the biggest solar provider in America.
And you get the sense that for Musk, this whole comeback wasn't just about financial success. It was validation. It was proof that his core missions, pushing humanity out into space and accelerating sustainable energy, weren't just some crazy pipe dreams. They were actually achievable.
And that really gets to the heart of this whole story. It kind of suggests that to create radical, world-altering change, maybe you can't just take calculated risks. It leaves us with this one really provocative question. Is flirting with total, catastrophic failure a necessary ingredient for building a truly different future?